I'm Jessica Rooks. I'm with the Mountain Sky Conference, and if I've done my math correctly, I'm eligible for 6 quadrennium.
How has your previous experience with managing staff and budgets prepared you for the role of bishop?
My first response to the question is I love budgets. My bachelor's is in economics, and so I took a number of accounting classes and business management classes. I enjoy numbers. I think they tell a story. They talk about our priorities when we look at our budgets. I'm comfortable with budgets. I've often been on multi-clergy staff and the one working with finance and the budget because they make sense to me and I enjoy delving into them. I have worked in small, medium, and large-sized churches, and so oversaw a budget anywhere from 200,000 to 1.3 million. Right now, I am the dean of the cabinet for the Mountain Sky Conference, and so am responsible for the 1.7 million portion of the conference budget. At one point early in my ministry, I thought if you could handle a $200,000 budget, you could probably handle about anything. There is a truth to that. Not quite that simple. Understanding, being comfortable with numbers, I've done that for 20 years. And being dean on the cabinet, I'm a part of the team that actively talks about, explores, makes hard decisions for our conference budget. So I do have experience with an annual conference budget, working with the finance committee, how to do the hard choices, especially when there are financial cuts. With staff, I started in a large church when I was first commissioned as an associate, and so have served in multi-staff larger systems, have been trained in conflict management, have led conflict management between staff and congregation members, between ministry areas, have had some training in staff management. Conflict mediation doesn't scare me. I actually think that work is sacred work. And so building relationships with staff, understanding how staff function different, what kinds of relationships different personalities need in managing individuals and staff as a whole, staff retreats, doing some of that hard conversation when there is conflict or when there's disagreement on values and priorities in local churches and organizations. I enjoy large system thinking, large organization thinking, and a big portion of that is staff management, budget management, and how we keep our eye on the vision or the mission, whatever it is that should be connecting all parts of the system to work together. I get excited about that kind of thinking and work, big systems, big picture, bringing the organization together with one goal, one vision, one point that we're all working towards. It's been part of both my local church ministry and my district superintendent ministry. I've been a DS I'm in my 3rd year now, and so have worked at both the local church and the district annual conference level with large systems, small systems, budgets, and staff.
What does collaboration in a multicultural context look like? Give examples, please.
2 things come to mind immediately when I hear this question. I'm a district superintendent in the Mile High Metro District, which is the Denver metro area. In my 3rd year, and in my 1st year, started a vision of increasing intercultural competency amongst the clergy and lay leadership of the district. And we engaged the IDI, the Intercultural Development Inventory, if anyone's familiar with that. All of the clergy were required to go through the process, as well as our DCOM laity and our district roundtable leadership laity. And then to form circuits, working with one another to develop intercultural competency as a district. We're now actually, in a fun way, moving that into the local churches, partly because we've all heard those stories of neighborhoods changing around churches and churches not knowing what to do. And we're finding that intercultural competency, intercultural intelligence is a big part of that. And folks want to move really quickly. They want this to just be a end and be all. We're gonna, in a year, everything's gonna be great. And what I find about multicultural work, intercultural collaboration, is it's slow and it takes time. partly because we have to take time first to understand what it means to work across cultures. Did a training on cross-racial cross-conference appointments a few years ago. And I have 2 pieces of paper that I actually keep at the side of my desk about working collaboratively across cultures. I want to grab them. One is a cultural orientation, and it talks about different ways of communication, high context, low context, and body language, task focused versus relationship focused. And I keep that piece of paper with me, and I pull it out when I'm on Zoom calls that I know are going to be multicultural, because it helps me remember that the way I'm communicating might not be the way someone else communicates. The way I'm listening might not be the way someone else listens culturally. And it takes more time to do the work well, because we have to step out of our experiences and recognize that there are a variety of experiences. Often there's miscommunication, not just because of a language barrier, but because of a cultural barrier that we don't stop to think about and recognize. I also keep a piece of paper, the iceberg concept of culture, the things that are above the surface that are language and food, those obvious things, versus all the parts of culture that are below the surface. I keep that close by to remind myself that there's a whole lot under the surface, and how to take the time to work with that in multicultural settings. How to try to listen, ask different questions, recognize that sometimes body language of a person of a different culture isn't what I expect it to be when body language of my own culture. I have 2 questions that I have taped on my monitor. That the first question is, does it need to be said? And the second question is, do I need to be the one to say it? And I have those for every Zoom meeting, because sometimes as a white clergy person, I can say something. And sometimes as a white clergy person, I'm just shutting up other voices that I need to leave space for. And so I'm a visual person, so I try to keep all those things around me that will help me pause, go slower, and think through multicultural work, knowing it takes time and intention.
Name specific instances, I'll speak in English, name specific instances where a bishop's authority is limited by the Book of Discipline and where the authority rests in those instances.
The first thing that comes to mind immediately has to do with credentialing. I served on the Board of Ordained Ministry for 12 years in our conference, mostly as the conference relations chairperson, and then also as the chair of the board for the last few years. And we talked a lot about the role of the BOM in credentialing and the role of the bishop. And the bishop doesn't have authority over credentialing. The Board of Ordained Ministry, the clergy body, the laity who serve on DCOMs and BOMs have the vote. In clergy session, the bishop presides, doesn't have vote when it comes to credentialing. So her authority is limited. I say her because our bishop is a she. The bishop does invite members onto the board, so has influence, but doesn't actually have a vote in the credentialing process from the district level to the board level, and to the transfer level now that is approved by the clergy body. I'm also thinking, kind of taking that further on trials. Once a trial starts, the bishop is out of the picture. A bishop from outside the conference presides on a trial. The jury is clergy in full connection. And so the bishop's authority after a complaint gets to the stage of a trial, the bishop is pretty hands-off, or is supposed to be pretty hands-off. That's again the clergy body. At annual conferences, bishops don't have vote. They preside, but they don't have vote. That the authority lies within the membership of the annual conference. At general conference, the bishops preside. They also don't have vote. That is the membership of the general conference. So in many stages and levels of our church, bishops preside, but don't have vote. Their authority is limited. They have influence in lots of different ways, but they don't actually have vote. The last thing that I think I can think of, at least off the top of my head, I'm a district superintendent in our conference in my third year, serving the Denver metro area, the Mile High Metro District. And I was surprised to learn how much authority I have as a DS that the bishop doesn't have say over when it comes to matters, especially of property sale or purchase, things that happen at the local church where the district superintendent has a say and the bishop doesn't have any authority in that work. So really matters that are for the decision of the annual conference, whether it's clergy or clergy and lay, a bishop's authority is limited in those decisions in the vote. Credentialing though is I think because of my 12 years on the board, that's the big one, separating credentialing and appointing. Bishop and cabinet appoint, clergy body, DCOMs, BOMs, credential. And it's an important partnership, but also an important distinction of who has authority where.
What are the top 3 most pressing issues facing the church?
I'm honest, I don't want to admit this first one, but I do think it is one of the top 3 pressing. I'm a district superintendent in our conference and have spent more time than I would like working against the misinformation campaign attack on the United Methodist Church. I'll be with a congregation tomorrow who sent me their list of questions, and just their questions showed what they've been hearing and the misinformation that is sinking into some of our congregations. And as much as I would like to say we don't need to give it lots of time and energy and attention, I actually think we do now. I would go so far as to say, I mean, it's an attack on the denomination, the misinformation, and how we respond to that is going to be really important for local churches, for annual conferences, for the denomination as a whole. How we share correct information in grace-filled ways that doesn't sink to that level of misinformation and attacks. I think we need to have some serious conversations on. We're doing that in our conference. We've launched a Belong campaign. We're trying to do things that are true to our character, and yet at the same time, we just need to address some of this misinformation that is seeping into the local churches. As a district superintendent, it takes more time than I wish I had to give it. I'd also say, at least in Mountain Sky, and I'm guessing across our denomination, how to truly live into multiculturalism is going to be really important. Our communities are changing in their cultures. The dynamics are changing. And we as a church are about 20 years, 30 years behind in responding. Neighborhoods are changing around churches and churches don't quite know what to do. And so how we increase or how we focus on a growth in intercultural competency, intercultural intelligence, multicultural communities, and doing that well takes intentionality, it takes time, it's slow work, but I think it's sacred and important work. And I think we'll begin to see a revitalization in the denomination when we really live into multiculturalism. I think Wesleyanism, Methodism leans towards that in a real organic way if we can figure out how to do that well. The third issue I would say kind of goes with that. It's about becoming relevant again. I think in a lot of ways, the United Methodist Church has become a church that reacts to or responds to rather than leads in society. We used to be a denomination who was on the forefront of many social issues, leading the way, women's ordination, anti-slavery, a number of things that the United Methodist Church really led society. And now we respond to, we react to. And I think in some ways we become irrelevant for people when we only react and respond. And so how do we as a denomination, as local churches in those communities, be the communities that lead in the society rather than react? Becoming relevant for the younger generations, which we know with studies, they are interested in mission and community building, organizing. How we do that well, along with worship that engages, along with with structure. It's kind of a whole overhaul of our structure in some ways. We all know we need it. It's just how to do it well for not only the church of today, but the church of tomorrow.